Hi everybody, welcome back to OC Avery. I hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to visit the birds and we're going to see how they're getting on with coping with that 40-degree heat. We're also going to see how the young birds are getting on during the molt, and we're going to visit those new arrivals as well. Don't forget to subscribe. We're aiming for 10,000 subscribers before the end of the year, so please subscribe down below. We begin by visiting the redpolls. Now, these are birds that don't really get on well with the heat. Previous years, we have lost a few during the heat waves, and sadly that is the same case. But remember that the heat of as recent that we've experienced here in the UK has been ridiculous. 40 degrees in the day. It's been the hottest it's ever been in the UK, so the birds are definitely not used to it, and our bird sheds, our aviaries and everything isn't built for that sort of heat, so it's been very difficult to cope with, and I've rather got away with it, whereas I know a lot of people have really suffered and have lost countless birds, and a lot of people it's almost wiped out them completely of everything. So we've lost 3 redpolls from the heat, so nothing too major. We lost a pair of normals. For some reason, the pair decided not to drink when it was 40 degrees heat. They got water, it was easily accessible, they'd been drinking it that morning, and by the afternoon they'd just, for some reason, not drank it, even when I've been topping it up and making sure it was cool. So we lost a pair there, and then we lost an old cobalt hen that was a 4-year-old bird. So not too much loss, and especially not as bad as it has been in previous years, and I know other people have experienced, but nevertheless it is rather annoying and frustrating. But the good news is with the redpolls, we've got some youngsters that have recently jumped the nests. We've got 3 normals here. The parents did a good job with the first round rearing 2. The second round, for some reason, they didn't feed at all. This third round, they actually reared 5 to about 5 days old, and then sadly 2 of them did perish, the smaller 2, the rumps, and then finally we've got these 3 that are now since jumped the nest and are beginning to pick up a bit of food for themselves. So they're about 2 weeks old now. They're doing rather well, and it's great to see that they're doing well and really getting on rather good. So it'd be nice, and I think that give it sort of 2 weeks time, they'll probably be completely independent and we can move them out to the young bird room. We've also had some more eggs hatch from a cobalt hen and a normal cockbird. There's 2 chicks currently in that nest. Sadly, we did lose 2 of them in the heat, 2 of which are now doing okay. So we'll see if we can get some more off them. It'd be nice if we could get this year's redpoll numbers to double figures, but I can't really see it happening. We'd have to have quite a miracle and another pair go down that will rear a good number of birds. For the rest of them, some are going into the molt now. It's the end of the season for them, and we'll look to soon move them elsewhere for molting. And a couple of them just seem to still be messing about, and I think that next year we're going to be cutting down, not wasting as much space with them, and making sure that we really do put some focus into the normal birds which we're looking at for exhibition. The recent heat has also had quite an effect on the greenfinches. They're a bird that we've had a rather good year with this season. They've generally been rather consistent and have done a good job rearing their youngsters. And I think the heat has just sort of tipped them over the edge with this. We had 3 pairs all go down, and they've been sat on eggs for about, sort of 2 weeks before last week. So they've been sat a while. We've got a nest in here, flight 4 of 3 youngsters. They're doing well. I think I'll be looking to ring them within the next day or so. But flights 3 and flight 2, these are pairs that have previously bred for us, and especially flight 2, they've done very well when rearing their youngsters over a number of years, this specific hen. However, sadly, the heat just seems to have tipped them over the edge, and we did have a number of dead in shell. 1 did hatch, but they failed to feed it for more than any, sort of 1 or 2 days. So it was a shame, and we did lose some, but we've got a nest of 3 being reared. They are sort of looking to go back down, but I don't know if I'm going to let them. It looks like the pair in flight 1 are looking to molt, and the pair in flight 5 are at a very similar stage, the cockbird with the crossbill hen. So I think we're looking towards the end of the season now with most of the native birds. We might get another round out of another pair of greenfinches, maybe another pair of redpolls, but that's looking to be probably the end of the season for most of the native birds. For a quick trip into the young bird room, and I must admit it's starting to get quite messy in here now, with a lot of the birds being completely in the mould. There's feathers everywhere and they're wrecking the place because they're getting rather restless. So we've got a couple of greenfinches now. Sadly, these youngsters, we did lose 2 in the heat as well. Really, really unusual. It definitely wasn't coccidiosis. They've been treated only recently for that, and they just seemed to not even drank or just couldn't quite cope with the heat. Only 2 from a cage of 6 though, so rather weird, but overall, we've got quite a good number of greenfinches this year, so I'm not too concerned. The rest of the canaries, they're getting on rather well. We've separated a young razza away from its parents recently, and that is molting out well as everything else. They're starting to get some real colour come through now, and some of them are looking to be a lot more towards the end of the molt and coming through a lot more with that colour. So it is looking good, and they're into that sort of almost adult plumage now. So of course we've also got the birds that need colour feeding in here. So we've got some red poles and a twite. Actually, we've got a harlequin canary and a twite in there as well. We separated the twite last week, and that is doing rather well. So that means we've got 2 young twites that we've bred this year. And of course the red poles and the other twites were bred earlier on in the season. So they're all on Carophyll red. They need Carophyll red to try and get that colour through. It's not something I'd usually do with young red poles, however it does make sexing them an awful lot easier, so that's what I'm going to try. And of course for the harlequin, they are a red based canary, so it'd be nice to get some real good colour come through them as well. Now sadly, a bit of a death that I have to report in that is also the young Norwich. We had that on some Carophyll orange. It was a sort of a clear bird, looked visually yellow, of course, a buff yellow bird that we saw in the last episode of Breeding British Birds, but sadly it just didn't cope with the heat quite right. Not too sure why, but we did sadly lose it. It did perish as well, and I can only put it down to being a younger bird that's rather heavily feathered. Very much a shame. Of course, I've offered baths, I've offered spray to keep them cool, I've had an extractor fan in here, I've had a normal desk fan to keep the airflow. I've done that in all the sheds, and sometimes it's just not enough. I've even given them Pearl Morbide to try and keep them hydrated, and I just couldn't get this bird to come back around. Sadly we did lose it, which is a real shame, but for the rest of them, they're all doing rather well, molting out quite nicely, and once they've sort of got a hell of a lot further into the molt, and that will get them in some show cages and assess the quality of these birds. A number of well-seasoned fanciers have said that the month of July is generally the best month for producing hybrids. Now, this is of course my first year trying real difficult hybrids using the bullfinch, but July just hasn't been that case for me really. We've had 2 full greenfinch bullfinch eggs finally after trying them multiple clutches all throughout this season. The chicks did develop and they made it to about 14 days old when that heat wave came in, and sadly they were dead in shell. I was obviously quite gutted by that. The fact that we got 2 hybrids, a very nice hybrid indeed and a rather hard one to produce, to then lose them due to the heat was really upsetting. And obviously if it had come a week after, we might have had some chicks that would have survived. So it's a real shame. It does look like now though, the red pole bully pair, both pairs are starting to go into the molt, and of course the greeny bully pair now, I think that now they've lost those eggs, I can't see them going back down again. The hen's looking a little bit worse for wear because she's really started molting, especially around the face. I think that we're sort of calling it a season now with the hybrids as well. There's no point in forcing them, there's no point in stressing them out, and we need to make sure that they're good birds for next year. So if we do decide to carry on with these pairs, of course that they're going to be in good condition to be able to do that. So sadly nothing good to report from the hybrid pairs this week, and probably nothing for the rest of this year. The consistent canaries have lived up to that name this week because they've been consistent. They've done rather well, I must admit. So we've had quite a bit of good news with them. So we've got some Portuguese harlequins that have gone back down on a couple of eggs. That's going to be their last round for this season, 100%. And then still, if the chicks don't make it, that'll be it. I'm going to be cutting off the season for them very soon, as they've been nesting all season, and I don't want to work them too hard and obviously lose them. Now the yellow mosaics have done a brilliant job rearing a yellow agate opal chick and a very, very nice Norwich chick. Now we saw this Norwich chick 2 weeks ago and it was in nest feather. It was obviously just coming through with that, growing that feather, about a week old. Well, now it's since left the nest, it is about 3 weeks old. It's doing very well, and it's been named the lucky bird. I don't quite understand this, but a lot of other fanciers have said that it's a sparrow-tailed bird. It's got this dark tail and it's a white bird, therefore it's a lucky bird. So you know what, I'll take that, because my luck this season hasn't been brilliant with any Norwich, but we've got a nice white Norwich chick. It's actually got a little bit of a sort of ear and a cheek on it, which is the variegated part, a bit of blue, and it's got a rather dark tail as well. It's a lovely little bird. Here it is in the show cage, and hopefully, you know, once it fills out, it might make a nice bird, possibly for the show bench, but maybe something to build the stud on as well. For the other birds, well, we had a yellow agate opal pair. They had 2 chicks. Now, sadly, we also lost a hen in the heat, so it's a real shame. However, the father has done a great job in just getting those chicks to a good point now that they're going to be okay. They're feeding themselves and they're doing relatively well. So I think give them another week, they'll be ready to separate off. For other pairs, we've got some feeders that have gone back down on some eggs. The Irish have finished for the season. The Razas are on some eggs as well after recently having their chicks separated from them. A young Raza that we recently did separate, and the young twine that they've been rearing. For other birds, we've got some yellow agate opals on some eggs. We've got some yellow mosaics on eggs, some Irish on eggs, and a crossbred sort of Fife cross yellow agate opal pair as well with some eggs. I don't know how well they're going to get on, but they're generally doing all right. And we've had some yellow mosaics also fledge the nest this week. So really good things from the Canaries. Now I think that this next week or so, up to the build-up, you know, in the start of August, we will be setting eggs, and then that will be it. That'll be the cut-off point. The start of August, we won't be letting any more nests go, you know, and be built, or any eggs laid, and they'll all be going into sort of molting quarters, bar those birds that will still be sat on eggs or rearing chicks. And that's where I'll then cut off the season. We don't want to overwork the birds, and we want to make sure that they molt out nicely, ready for the show bench, if they are going to be going on the show bench this sort of show season, and also want to make sure they get through it comfortably, ready for next year's season. So I very much hope that you have enjoyed today's video, seeing how we've been getting on over the past 2 weeks. I hope you've not lost too many birds over that heat wave if you are, of course, in the UK and Ireland. It's been so hot, it's been very difficult to deal with anyway, just as a human, never mind being a bird covered in feathers. So I've been doing my absolute best to make sure that they've been kept cool, the ventilation's been fine, they've had baths, and sadly just some birds just have struggled too much and haven't pulled through. But I think that losing about 6 to 7 birds through a heat wave is nowhere near as bad, so I'm rather fortunate and feel rather lucky with that, whereas a hell of a lot of people have lost an awful lot of birds. So hopefully you've got on okay. So if you have enjoyed today's episode and you would like to see more episodes of Breeding British Birds and more content to come up on bird keeping and birds and wildlife in general, please make sure to subscribe down below so you don't miss any more future content. And if you have enjoyed today's video, smash a like on it as well. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. See you in the next one.